Hello there folks, and welcome back to another speed paint video. For the first time in a while, I've got a Neopets brush Pokemon video for you. And today we're going to be drawing Lilligant. Lilligant is one of my girlfriend's favorite Pokemon. She really likes Lilligant, Wiglet, and Tropius. I think those would probably be her top 3. She really likes the Gen 3 era guys, but Lilligant is another slightly newer Pokemon that she really likes. And today I'm going to be drawing Lilligant in the style of a few different Neopets brushes, so without further ado, let's get into the speed paint. The first of these Neopets brushes I have for you guys today is the Candy Brush. The Candy Brush is just one of my favorites for this challenge because there are so many possibilities, there's so much diversity in the types of candies you can select for a design, and for today's, with Lilligant, I decided to go with a ribbon candy. Ribbon candy, I haven't actually encountered very much in my life. I just remember when we used to make gingerbread houses when I was a kid, there was one year where we had just like an absurdly large amount of ribbon candy. At least that's what I remember in my child memory. And I just remember being fascinated by like the texture and the look and the color of ribbon candy. Like, it doesn't taste that good, in my opinion at least. It's basically just plain sugar from what I remember. But I really did like how glossy it looked and how it really does just look like ribbon. Like, it looks like silky fabric, and I just think that's really cool. I also like the variety of colors that it comes in, and, you know, stripes. I really like those in a design, and I couldn't resist doing a very stripy, very fun, glossy Lilligant. I ended up going with a very, like, Christmassy palette here, since at least I associate ribbon candy with the Christmas time, and Lilligant's already got a very, like, green and red sort of palette, even though technically it's orange, but for this one, we're gonna do red, and I thought the yellow went well with it as well. It's just a very fun, I don't know, like traffic light sort of color palette, and I think it's very cute. I gave her a nice jolly pose, like she's very happy, maybe welcoming you to a party here. I think there's just a lot of like fun and festivity associated with ribbon candies for me. And on top of all that, I wanted to not only make the stripes feel distinctive and very much like ribbon candy, but I wanted to give that sort of texture to it as well. So usually I don't shade the Neopets Pokemon art. I usually try to keep it very flat and very similar to like how they're rendered in the Neopets style, which is typically just like flat with minimal cell shading. And for my own references, I like to keep them flat anyway in case I decide to draw these characters again. Makes them a lot easier. But for this one, I felt like the texture and the look of ribbon candy and the shininess of it, the glossiness of it, is so integral to its design, and candy Neopets usually have a more highly rendered feel anyway, so I decided to put some highlights on top of it and blend them out a little bit to give that glossy, ribbony feel that ribbon candy really has. Like, it's a very, like, nice, shiny, silky looking material, and I wanted to properly convey that so it doesn't just look like a striped Lilligant, but specifically a striped candy Lilligant. And I think that I ended up getting there. This design was just a lot of fun. I think I am the most happy with this lily, the flower on top of the head, out of any of the designs for today. And even though the stripes were a little bit challenging, it was a bit of a puzzle trying to figure out what colors to put where in a way that felt readable, while also feeling distinct from the original design. I'm pretty happy with this one. I think the highlights work really well with it, and I just had a lot of fun working with a material like ribbon candy and trying to render that out in a simplified and yet still recognizable way. So I hope you guys enjoy this design too. Next up, we have a Tyrannian brush Lilligant. Now, if you're not familiar with like Neopets and the lore and stuff, you might be asking, what is Tyrannian? Well, as I explained to my girlfriend, who was also asking me about this while I was working on it, Tyrannian is basically like the caveman aesthetic brush for Neopets. A lot of the Neopets, when they are painted with the Tyrannian brush, they usually just look like cavemen, but some of them look like old extinct animals, like dinosaurs and whatnot. And they always look like really rugged, and as a kid I always thought they were kind of ugly, but I see that that's kind of the point with Tyrannian Neopets. They are supposed to be a little gruff and rough and a little beat up looking. And yeah, the idea of Tyrannia is like very interesting to me. Like, I feel like there's a lot of dinosaur based settings and a lot of like children's media, but I feel like they're so often like tropical. Like, they're very rarely, like, an arid climate like Tyrannia is. So I just think that's pretty interesting for the Neopets world. When I think about it as an adult, I'm like, oh yeah, that is weird that it's like a very dry place. Tyrannia is very famous for that omelet, if you've ever seen the giant omelet from Neopets. If you're not already familiar with the game, there's a big omelet, and you can go there and get a piece of it every day. It's awesome. I've always wanted to eat it. As a kid, the PNGs that they have of the omelet, I always thought looked so appetizing. And whenever I've tried to show them to my friends as adults, a lot of them are like, what the hell are you talking about? This looks like, it looks garbage, it looks bad. But to me, the omelet, I understand that it looks kind of rough, but I still want to eat the omelet pieces. Except for, like, maybe the ones that are flavored, like, I don't know. One of them is poop flavored, which is kind of gnarly. Anyway, the Tyrannian element is very weird because on one hand, it's, like, got the prehistoric vibe, but it's also got a specific aesthetic that the Neopets characters are going for. So I tried to hit somewhere in the middle. And because Lilligant isn't really an animal, it's a plant, it felt wrong to make it based on a dinosaur. So for this design, I decided to base it off of a ginkgo tree. If you aren't already familiar, ginkgos are one of the oldest types of trees we have on our planet. They were evolved to be pollinated by a specific type of animal, but that animal is no longer around, so they've outlasted their original pollinators. Now they just make do with whatever things exist in the current day, like our current day bugs, birds, and wind. And I don't know, just ginkgo is such an interesting tree to look at. I remember where I went to school, we had a couple of like ginkgo trees like by some of the campus buildings, and the way they turn such a beautiful vibrant yellow in the fall is so cool. They have such a distinctive leaf shape that I thought would be fun to use in this design. I used it for like the chest petals and the head petals, for example. And I don't know, just ginkgo is so unique in terms of the aesthetic and the vibes. And I also thought it kind of fit the Tyrannian vibe because, I don't know if any of you know this, but ginkgo fruits kind of smell awful. Like, the ginkgo trees are kind of stank. Like, I think it's when the fruits get stepped on, they just smell really bad. And I think it's just because me as an animal that is very modern, I'm just not used to how that's supposed to smell because it's so ancient of a plant that it's like almost alien to me. I don't know, ginkgos are just really interesting trees to think about. I think about like their place on Earth a lot, and I think they are very much like the living fossil of plants. At least when it comes to something very, I don't know, aesthetically distinctive. I also kind of wanted to take a little inspiration from ferns, but I only really went as far as like a little bit of texture here and there, but for the most part, I tried to go very traditionally Tyrannian with this color palette, very autumnal and arid looking, something that looks at home in a desert, and very rugged and rough. But I also wanted to call back to one of my favorite things about the ginkgo, which is its autumn palette with the yellow leaves, so I incorporated those. I also, instead of having a flower, I used a ginkgo fruit. Since ginkgo flowers are very tiny and white, I feel like they don't really fit the big flower on the head that Lilligant's going for. I thought the fruit would be very distinctive and look a lot better as a flower replacement than the actual flowers of the ginkgo tree. Overall, this is a very fun, like, autumnal design, and I had fun just looking at pictures of ginkgo as art reference while working on this one. The last Neopets brush I'm going to be using on Lilligant today is going to be the Darigan brush. If you're someone who's not very familiar with the Neopets world and the Neopets setting, Darigan is another very specific place from that world, and it is like this, I guess, goth, evil Halloween sort of themed place that I believe it's under a curse. Honestly, if you want to hear someone ramble about Darigan Citadel and like the history of it and the importance of it, I highly recommend just going to the Amanda Files and going to her channel. She rambles about it a lot, and I swear to God, everything I know about Neopets is from listening to her. Even though I did grow up playing the game, I very rarely paid attention to any of the lore if it didn't have to do with the fairies directly, so I'm not very knowledgeable on it, but the long and short of it is that the Darigan Neopets are basically cursed to be cool and goth looking. And just like the Tyrannian Neopets, they tend to be very rugged and a little rough looking, like a lot of them have like scuffs on their wings, or they have like rough looking fur, they look like they probably could use a shower or something, some of them anyway. And they have like this red, black, and then they have this muted blue and purple that is often used in their designs. There's actually kind of a good amount of diversity when it comes to the Darigan Neopets. Some of them are very like classically vampire colored, I feel like, where they're very like red and black with yellow eyes. Some of them are, a lot of them actually are more of this like warm purple color. The Bruce, which is where I grabbed the color for this face, is like muted blue mixed with like a black. There's a lot of diversity, but usually they're very muted colors. They tend to be very cool toned, which is very different from the Tyrannian warm tones, with the exception of that bright red that is often used as like an eye color or as an accent color to really up the classic, I don't know, like cartoon goth, cartoon evil aesthetic that Darigan really has. The Neopets that are Darigan also usually have like a default angry looking face even in their so-called happy poses. And I tried to make Lilligant have a slightly angry looking face. I didn't want to exaggerate it too much, like I don't want to have it too much of a baked in expression since I feel like part of Lilligant's charm is the fact that its face is so simple. So I gave it slightly angry eyes to make it fit in with the Darigan vibe while also not pushing it too far out of what makes this design good in the first place. And just like with the Tyrannian one, I try to give it some wear and tear. Instead of having a lot of like literal tears in the body of it though, I tried to give it like these little sharp bits, like it's a little bit pointier, the textures are a little bit rougher. I tried to give it like, I don't know, like a Saturday morning cartoon villain vibe. I feel like that's what Darigan's really all about, is that energy. At least in the more fantastical sense, I think, I forget the name of it, but there's like a space aesthetic area Neopets as well that has more of like a sci-fi Saturday morning cartoon villain vibe. But Darigan's more about like the classic medieval or fantastical, like just good old-fashioned silly cartoon villain. I feel like it is a very good time capsule to like what cartoon villainy might have looked like in like the early to mid 2000s. And it's really fun that like it still exists as is on Neopets. Neopets in general is just such a fun little time capsule of like aesthetic movements and like designs. Like so many Neopet character designs are very much like reminiscent of the era they were created in. And there's a lot of like interesting art you can see like that people have archived, where you can see like it used to really just be like two people's passion project and then how it became an actual like company with actually like really nice finished art. Like modern day Neopets, when they get new art, it's usually more rendered, whereas like the older ones tend to have that more flat style that I try to mimic with these drawings. And honestly, there's just a lot of interesting stuff when it comes to the Neopets art, which is why I always like revisiting it when I do these Neopets Pokemon challenges. So yeah, going into the Darigan aesthetics was a very interesting little challenge. I haven't done one of the Darigan Pokemon since, I think the Jirachi one, which would have been quite a while ago at this point. So I'm pretty happy with how this one came out. It was a lot of fun to design, and I think she looks very fun and goth. And with that, that's all I've got for you guys today. This is a pretty short and simple video, so I really hope you enjoyed seeing the designs in this one. Which of the Neopets forms of Lilligant was your favorite? Let me know in the comments. I would love to also hear any suggestions for any other Pokemon you would like to see with Neopets brushes. I swear I will do more of these Neopets brush Pokemon challenges in the future. I've just been busy with other ideas lately, but I promise to do more of these in the spring and the summer coming up. And I also want to do a challenge maybe where I'll do Neopets as Pokemon types, so let me know if you're interested in that. Let me know what Pokemon types you would like me to apply to which types of Neopets. I would love to hear your suggestions. If you would like to support me, I recommend checking out my Ko-fi page. You can find that linked in my description. You can get commissions on there, you can support me monthly, you can check out my shop, which has things like adoptables and zines and whatnot. And you can also follow me for my blog posts, since I try to put those out every couple of weeks with basically an update of what I'm working on. So if you want to be part of like a mailing list, Ko-fi's a great way to do that. And with that, I believe that is everything I have for you guys today. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you again next week with another speed paint. And in the meantime, why don't you go out there and make some art?